Hi everybody, it's Mark here. It's been a while. It's been a busy 6 weeks, but I'm happy to be back, and I thought I'd come back strong and answer probably it's over a year old prompt now from YouTube, but Lisa Pappas had this 21 tarot questions prompt, and I think I'll go through it now. It has to do with going through your deck collection and categorizing according to the 21 questions. So here we go. So question number 1, what deck would they have to pry out of your cold, dead hands? And for me, that is the Rosetta Tarot. It's an independent deck from M.M. Moline. She does the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast with Susan T. Chang. And what's special about this deck is it's just never going to be seen again. There was 777 copies, and I got number 253, and I got it off eBay at a fairly decent price some years ago, and I really love it. It's thothy, but with its own style. I love the papyrus paper and the hieroglyphics, and so these are all the words that you would actually see on the standard Thoth deck, but they have been translated into hieroglyphics. And even though the images are close in intention to original Thoth, she does bring her own thing to it, and all the colors are very traditional to the Golden Dawn attributions, and she really makes them pop out. And so I just really love this deck, and I just don't think I'd be able to get it again. So, I'm hanging on to it. They give you a card that gives you the translation of those hieroglyphics. So, all in all, really a beautiful deck, and it really reads great. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, what deck would you wish existed but doesn't? Actually, this is question number 3. I jumped to 3. I'll go back to 2. Well, okay. 2 is what's your guilty pleasure deck? And the answer is basically almost all my decks. I've got about 45. Nobody needs 45 decks, and I know people have much more than that. I would say what I need is one good Thoth deck, one good RWS deck, and one good Tarot de Marseille deck. And that's all I really need. So anything apart from those 3, I would consider a guilty pleasure. Okay, the deck that I wish existed, it's very close. We've got the new Thoth deck with the revamped colors, and it's beautiful. The only slight issue I have with Thoth in general is I wish that the Thelema philosophy wasn't seen on the cards so much. In most cases, it doesn't really make any difference. You don't see Thelema here on the 7 of Cups at all. And same for most of the cards. And no problem with the Thelema philosophy. It's just about living your life your way, being your best self, following your bliss and all that. And I totally agree with that, but I wouldn't call myself a Thelemite. But in any case, this one card, Judgment card, is very connected to the Thelema Book of the Law paradigm, and it's just a little harder to get into the meaning of the card when I see the Thelema sort of laid over it so strongly. But as I say, it's not the case for the majority of the cards. But I just like tarot to be tarot, and I don't really want a philosophy or a theme to sort of override the tarot tradition. Okay, a deck that I would recommend for a new reader, of course, most people would say the standard RWS and blah, 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 but I would rather pull somebody into the world of Thoth, and it's much easier to start with Thoth than to switch over to Thoth. But rather than recommending the actual Thoth deck, with the images are very, very powerful, and sometimes the energy can be too much for someone new. I would actually recommend this little kit of the Aleister Crowley Tarot. It's on sale all the time, so I don't know if it's still available, but it was went for like $15 here in Canada. First of all, it has a decent booklet with enough information to get you started along a Thothy path. And the cards, for the most part, are similar in design to the original Thoth, but they're more computer generated, and so they're much more clearer and sharper, and you can see the titling and the keywords and the decan associations, Mars and Capricorn, very, very clearly on this card. Here again is the debauch card I showed you from the original deck, so you can see even the colorization is very similar. But now we very clearly see that it's Venus in Scorpio, and here's that Aeon card. Seems just a little more simplified than what we saw before, and I just think it seems like just a good way to get started. They have really good court cards. You can see everything that's going on. It's important that you know that the Prince of Swords has a sword and a scythe, and it gets a little bit lost in the other deck, but not in this one. So, of course, the images aren't as gorgeous as Lady Frida Harris, but it's a really great starter deck, and like I said, it comes with a decent book. So, all in all, I can recommend that one as well. Okay, what is the next question? A deck that you wanted to get along with but never clicked with. I can't show it to you because I did pass it on to a friend. It was the much loved by everyone but me, Mary L. Tarot. Actually, I did love the imagery, very powerful, really amazing, and even slightly Thothy. But I just couldn't read with it. It just, close up of a wolf's face, and that's the chariot, and I'm just like, I don't see any pulling in different directions and this and that. And I just couldn't get it to work for me, and so that's gone. But one that I still have, and I should have kept that Mary L. Well, not should have, but it was the original indie version, so it's worth quite a lot of money. So if I was collecting decks for their value and not their usage, I would have held on to it. But I don't keep decks that I don't use. I just think, what's the point? So this one is sort of in that category as well. The Alchemical Tarot, again, this version is out of print, so I'm hanging on to it. But do I use this deck? Not really, I don't. I just can't get along with it. I mean, how do you read that? It's just, some of the cards are more easy and accessible, but in others, you're just, I don't know. It just doesn't 100% work for me. I mean, I can read any deck. I can read any set of cards. I just will read the image intuitively and that type of thing. But again, I do like to stick with what I consider to be tarot, and these kinds of things are just sort of odd to me, and so I would certainly never reach for this deck to read for somebody in, let's say, a professional capacity. I just never would. I wouldn't trust that I could come up with a decent answer for the person. Okay, the next question is a deck that you have and keep for the art only. Well, that would be the Prisma Vision deck, and it's a beautiful deck. It has, my favorite kind of glossy or gilded silvery stuff here, and it has a very I guess you would call it Van Gogh quality, and I do love Van Gogh very much. But again, just like with the alchemical, there's just, I don't know, in a lot of the cards, they just don't do it for me. I find the figures are way too small. Something that makes or breaks a deck for me is the court cards. I need really, really good court cards. And these are just this Page of Wands. You know, what's going on here? You don't see any real expression on the face. I guess it's meant to be an energy more than a personification, but I just don't like these courts at all. So I keep it for the art, which I do think is beautiful, but it really doesn't do much for me in terms of readings. Okay, a deck you bought because other people did. I don't have it anymore, and I don't regret it. It was the Wild Unknown. Everybody knows Kim Grant's Wild Unknown, with the black and white with spots of colors and very animal-oriented deck. I really hate animals as court cards, or hate might be too strong a word, but I prefer to see people, humans. The deck worked until it didn't, because the images were just so simplistic that they only had so much to give, so much wiggle room for your intuition, and then it was just kind of done. It just didn't have anything else for me. But I'll always thank it, because it was kind of my bridge deck between reading with RWS only decks and moving into more Tarot de Marseille and Thoth, because it's a very pippish kind of deck, the Wild Unknown deck. So that was a really great transition deck for me. Okay, a deck that's kind of over your head. I don't know if this is over my head, but it's also very hard to read. It's the Voyager Tarot. There's just way too much going on in the cards. Some of it is, you know, you need to study archaeology or history or some of these other things in order to get the references. You know, I enjoy it, but I just don't know what to look at. It makes it hard to read. The pips I find especially difficult, and the keywords aren't resonant of what I'm used to the keywords would be for those cards in other decks. I don't like worlds instead of discs or pentacles. Yeah, it's just, you know, I use it more, if I use it at all, as an oracle deck. You know, you pick one card and you get a message from that, from the keyword on the card or whatever. And it works fine in that capacity, but otherwise, I don't make much use of it. One that was really over my head was the Barbara Walker Tarot. I didn't really like the art over time. It had very dark energy. I don't know, it just, and again, it had a lot of goddess references that I didn't get. I would have to study up on, and so I don't have that one anymore. Which deck surprised you? Well, I have two. One of my favorite decks to use right now is the Initiatory Golden Dawn Tarot. It's Thothy without the Thelema, which is what I was looking for. It's also Thothy, but without pips. It actually infers what would be on the pip. Here's like the Two of Pentacles, and on the pip in Thoth it would say change. We don't see any keyword, but we still see this night to day and the lemniscate and you know, various other symbols, sort of more pippish, are in the deck, but they have humans sort of playing out some action in the foreground, which helps, because sometimes I just like to read the story. Like, for instance, here's the Two of Wands, Dominion, and I really like to see the personification of that. In the Thoth, we really sort of just get this, the two crossed fiery wands. So, I still prefer the Thoth for reading professionally because I like its abstract quality, so I can pick up so many different things. Here we have a specific scenario, so you're kind of stuck in it, but it makes for a great story. Like if this person is coming towards this person, you can see the story that's happening there. The other thing was that the majors in particular, I saw some sort of differences in the way they did the majors. Like, here's our Fool, it's a child with a wolf on a leash reaching for a flower. But when you go back and you read the actual descriptions of the Golden Dawn decks, which we don't see, they did them for themselves. There are versions out there, but this is one that is very dynamic, and so they've just gone off what the description is for the majors and created their own scenario to play it out. So that surprised me. I looked at some of the majors and I thought, oh, that's different, or that's not how I expect to see the Fool. And then I read about the fact, then I actually read the Golden Dawn descriptions and I'm like, oh, they pretty much nailed it. Like the Wheel of Fortune or the Fortune card, they say there's a monkey with its hand out, but they say there's all these multicolored balls in a wheel to represent the 12 zodiac signs. Everything that's on the card that I was kind of puzzling about was actually is in the description. The Hangman is in a sea cave, as described by the Golden Dawn, and sure enough he is. And I was asking myself, why is he in a cave? So there's your answer. So that was a surprise. I thought this was just going to be like kind of a fun, dynamic deck where I can use my Golden Dawn Thoth system, but with storytelling added. And then I didn't realize just how authentic it actually was. Another one that surprised me is the Astera Tarot, and I've seen it online, so it wasn't a super surprise. I knew what the cards looked like and that type of thing, but and there are 4 different artists, and yet their imagery really matches up nicely. But what surprised me about the deck, and I didn't realize until I read the book that came with it, and it's a decent book, is that all of the minors have a specific animal across a number. So all the 4s have rabbits in them, all the 7s have raccoons. So if you see a bunch of, in a layout, a bunch of raccoons, you got a lot of 7s and 7 energy. And that was a surprise to me. I didn't expect it. I don't know of any other deck that does that as well. Okay, which deck doesn't work for you, but you keep it as a collectible? Well, that's my very first deck, which came in this really cool paper mache carton, and it's the 1JJ Swiss, so it's very, sort of along the lines of Tarot de Marseille, and I can read Tarot de Marseille, so their Fool is more like a jester. And so I would have no problem reading with that bit that it's Tarot de Marseille based, but because it was anti-Rome and the church, they changed the Hierophant to Jupiter, the god Jupiter, and they changed the High Priestess to the goddess Juno. And I can't make that work in a tarot reading when they come up. They just don't fit in the deck. So that was the end of that one for reading, but I keep it because you don't want to give away your very first deck that you laid your eyes on and your hands on. Okay, so my favorite gilded deck is the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. And the reason I love it is the only deck that it's antique gold finish gilding, so it's not that bright gold, which doesn't really appeal to me, but it has a very antique sea chest kind of finish to it, which goes really nice with the cards. And again, it has not papyrus but a papery kind of border to it. So this is almost, it is my favorite gilding, but it's also one that you would have to pry out of my dead cold hands because I love it that much. The next one is, which deck do you love or like, but you hate the cardstock? And this is another indie deck. It's the Efflorescent Tarot. It's like the bastard child of, you had the Morgan Greer deck and the Dreaming Way, if you know that deck, and you sort of mash them up, you would sort of get this deck. Cards are really beautiful. I'm told the people look sad. I just like to think of them as wistful, but they have like the most plasticky. They're big cards, they're plasticky, hard to shuffle. It's almost like a coaster kind of energy. And the person, you know, it was an indie project and they cut them all by hand in their home, so they don't really line up. Along here, they're slightly different sizes, and I like to choose cards intuitively like this, so then my hand gets stuck. And then, are you picking intuitively, or are you picking because your hand got stuck? So that's a problem for me. The deck that gave you the willies, this is a deck I've never had, will never have. The Deviant Moon, very popular. I just am so creeped out by that deck and the imagery. I would never read with it. I don't think it's evil, I just think it's creepy. A deck for shadow work. I don't do shadow work. I'm not even sure I know what shadow work is. I'm open to shadow work, but I don't have any specific deck for that sort of thing, nor do I practice it thus far. A deck I love in theory, but not in practice. That is the Osho Zen. Much like the Voyager, I use this one more as pull one card oracle kind of thing, and I don't even do that very often. Like, I'm not really an oracle guy, but it's just they're very different from RWS or Thoth or any system, with different keywords, and I like the imagery, so you know, I do like a lot about it. I like the artwork, and I like the Zen vibe, and I do like how the cards are explained in the book. I always love a deck with, as you can see, I try to get decks with thick books that come with them. But overall, it's I can't put it into my system, you know. So I let it be what it is, and that's fine. But it's not sort of tarot for me kind of vibe. So like I said, makes a great one pull card kind of deck. Okay, what else have we got here? We're coming to the end. A deck you would never use for someone else. Well, I would never say never because, you know, my friends are very open-minded, but I wouldn't use this publicly or professionally. It's the Cosmic Tribe. I love it because it's thothy. It has horrible cardstock too, the most cardboardy I've ever seen. But there's tons of actual, real humans being nude with genitals in your face in this deck. So you have to be selective of who's open to that and who wants that. Okay, a deck I would never use for myself is this one. Yep, it was my starter deck decades ago, and I just can't, I would never read with this deck for myself. I would just get nothing because it's just so overused in all the books over time that I just don't see anything fresh in the imagery anymore. I just see the standard meanings, and so Nothing against it as a learning deck, but and you know, good on the creators and all that stuff. It was a game-changing kind of deck, but it is not for me to read for me. Okay, the deck I couldn't bring myself to buy. It's called the Maria Tarot. It's a Thothi deck that independently produced with some beautiful artwork from what I've seen online. But it's over like $170 with the shipping to Canada, and you know, I'll go up to 100, maybe 120 for a deck I really want, but I just can't see 170, so I'm just going to have to manifest it in a secondhand bookstore someday or online or something that's affordable. So what is my favorite pip deck? It's next. It is, of course, Tarot de Marseille, because those are so pippy. And that's what I like about the Thoth, that their minors are somewhere between Marseille pips and RWS sort of scenics. So it just makes that nice fine line between them. But this is an independent deck that I got on that makegames.com or whatever it is. And it is really beautiful. I mean, the artwork really appeals to me, and they've put more into these pips. You do get a different energy when you look at them, and I haven't used it for a while, but just looking at the cards again, I think this is in my top 5 decks for just pure artistry, just happy to look at the cards, you know, and so definitely my favorite pip, no question about it. Okay, now we're getting down to the last ones. A deck that slaps you with the truth, and that is the one I've already showed you, the Initiatory Golden Dawn deck. And this is not my most recent deck that I've purchased, but it's the second most recent, and I'm just loving it. I'm just loving it, and it gives you that truth like the Thoth does, but even more so because it's Italian. My Italiano people, they created it, and I would call it a very fiery deck, a very Italian deck. The energy just comes right out at you, and I guess that's like a slap in the face. So the last one, 21st question, is a deck that got away. So I can't show you a deck, but I can show you this James Radcliffe book. And I have all his books. I've got about 4 of them, I think. And I really think he's a great tarot writer and much overlooked. RWSy kind of writing, but you know, you can go beyond that. I mean, I would just recommend this deck in general. I mean, this book in general. But he did put out a deck called Tarot of the Masters, based on famous artwork, and then sort of put into the RWS system. This is, I believe, the Hermit card, or a part of the Hermit card. And I really liked the art. He did it himself, and I thought, oh, I would love that deck. And a couple years went by, and it popped up on eBay. And I hadn't been using eBay for quite a while. Anyway, there was a bidding thing. I kind of messed up. It was going for only $60. And I thought I had purchased it, but I hadn't. Somebody else over-purchased it, and they got it, and I didn't. And I've never seen it again. And even though I've moved on from RWS system, I would, because I love his book so much, I would love to have a copy of that deck. It's called Tarot of the Masters. There's another Tarot of the Masters that comes from Italy, which is kind of Tarot de Marseille. It's not, that's the one that's available from Lo Scarabeo. This is Tarot of the Masters, same title, but a whole different deck. So anyway, there you go. There's my 21 questions, and I'd love to see yours, and also share your thoughts. See you next time.